The world says that Kim Kardashian is perfect, but God says that you are perfect.
The world says fitting in is perfect, but God says being you is perfect.
The world says being who you should be is perfect, but God says being who you want to be is perfect.
The world says that being normal is perfect, but God made you unique in your own way.
The world says being rich is perfect, but wealth is measured in many other ways.
The world says having friends is important, but God says being yourself is more important.
The world says that being smart is perfect, but I think knowing common sense is perfect.
The world says that having money is important, but God said that being happy is more important.
The world thinks that war is important, but God thinks that peace is important.
The world thinks that expensive items are important, but God says donating to charities is more important.
The world thinks that being accepted is important, but God thinks that being unique is important.
The world thinks that fame is important, but God thinks that friends are important.
The world thinks that being tall and skinny is important, but God thinks that being yourself is most important.
The world thinks loving stuff is important, but God thinks loving each other is important.
The world thinks that themselves are important, but God thinks that serving others is important.
The world thinks that being popular is important, but God thinks that being individual is important.
The world thinks that being in the spotlight is important, but God thinks that being humble is important.
The world thinks fitting in is important, but God thinks trust is important. Thinks money is important, but God thinks love is important.
The world says that fame is important, but God says that prayer is more important.
The world thinks that having swag is important, but God thinks that having prayer is important.
The world says being skinny is perfect, but God says putting others before yourself is perfect.
The world said being popular is perfect, but God said everyone is equal.
The world says being pretty is perfect, but God says He made you in His own image.